at least 2 out of 3 of the world's fish have plastic in their belly.
And our guest today is doing something about it. In fact, the solution that they found saved 47 million plastic bags from being in our waterways. Welcome to The Human Factor, the show where we explore social change through the eyes of social entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders. My name is Melanie Roussin, her name is Erin McCabe, and we are your hosts.
Jordyn de Boer is one half of the small grassroots organisation Boomerang Bags. Started in 2013 with the goal of reducing Australia's huge reliance and use of disposable, single-use plastic bags, Boomerang Bags engage the local community in making reusable bags that are then returned to the community in a variety of methods. So Jordyn, please fill in the gaps in my intro and tell us about how you would describe yourself.
So I'm from the Gold Coast. I'm 27. And pretty much the usual stuff. I like to surf and hang at the beach.
And how would you describe Boomerang Bags to someone else?
So it's a community organisation. We sort of started out with the idea of it being mostly environmental with tackling plastic pollution as the main focus. But as it kind of developed, it turned into a lot more of a community thing because we're engaging communities in helping us to tackle that issue. And in that way, it kind of crosses both areas. And I guess now it's a community and environmental organisation, which is all about connecting people and connecting them to issues of waste and sustainability as well.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you like to surf, but what does a typical day look like for the person behind a community organisation like Boomerang Bags?
I'm a morning person. So definitely. If I can, the first thing I'll do is go for a surf, and if not, head to the beach for at least a little bit, and then usually get stuck straight into checking emails and planning the day ahead, which can be anything from meetings to going to we have a headquarters here on the Gold Coast, so that's often where our meetings are, but it's also where a lot of the sewing and making the bags takes place. Yeah, it's pretty varied, really.
For someone who used to live on the Sunshine Coast, I'm very much jealous of waking up to the beach. It's such a great way to start your day, isn't it? So what I want to ask you, Jordyn, is what is the one thing that most people don't know or understand about the effect of plastic bag on the environment?
Well, for me, like the first thing that kind of really got me thinking about it, apart from just how prolifically we use them, was that they're actually made out of it's a petroleum-based product, which means that it's full of a lot of toxic chemicals. But also that, I guess when we think about plastic ending up in the ocean, often the first thing we're thinking is, it might get mistaken as a jellyfish by a turtle or get ingested by something else. But not only that, as they start to break down, it never actually goes away. I think that's something that can be overlooked. So while a plastic bag in hundreds to thousands of years, I should say, might break down into smaller pieces, those smaller pieces are still in the environment in some form, being ingested by other things or leaching the chemicals into the environment. So the problem is much bigger than I think we think at first.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's probably one of the things that I didn't realise when you buy the eco plastic bags. They're not really, they just break down into smaller bits of plastic.
Yeah, it's a common misconception, that one, a lot of greenwashing.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm interested to know, obviously you guys are really driven by your community, but what exactly is your business model?
So essentially, we started out just with this idea of doing a small community project on the Gold Coast here. And then when we started, we did it quite effectively. And then when we started getting contacted by other people from around Australia that wanted to do something similar, we kind of saw an opportunity there that, well, we did it a certain way and we made a whole bunch of mistakes along the way, as you do when you're starting anything new. So perhaps we could provide some tools for these other groups that wanted to do it to save them reinventing the wheel and making the same mistakes that we did. So that's kind of just evolved over the years, and what we've now developed is like a toolkit that is sent out to communities all over the world and gives them the resources that they need to be able to implement Boomerang Bags as a community project. So there's about 300 communities now around the world that are getting their own materials together, they're getting their community together and making the bags and getting them spread around the world.
If you're thinking back about your journey to date with Boomerang Bag, what would you say was one of the worst moments to date? Take us through that story, if you could.
It's hard to think of anything. I guess I see anything that you could see as a bad thing as an opportunity for learning. But I guess the first thing that comes to mind is, and it happened quite recently as the project was being implemented by other areas around Australia. And it's quite varied in each community, and each community adapts it to kind of make it their own. But the original model that we set out, which was like a bag share system where the bags were being borrowed by people, and then the idea was that they would return them to the shops. I guess one of the biggest challenges that we faced was people weren't always bringing them back. And so we've almost had to do a whole remake of that model recently to make it because it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that they weren't coming back, because the feedback we were getting is that people were taking the bags from wherever they, it might be outside of a business or something like that, and then they loved them so much that they want to keep them, and then they're using them over and over. So the impact's still being achieved, but from the communities that were making the bags, they were getting quite disheartened that the bags weren't always coming back. So we've had to shuffle that model around a bit. And I guess that's been a bit of a challenge because, we were 150 odd communities in when that happened. So we had to get 150 community coordinators plus all of their groups of volunteers on board with that, and, help them with that transition into different logos and different models and that kind of thing. But we're sort of in that transition now, and it's working quite effectively and being received pretty positively. So even though it was a scary and hard thing to do at the time, it kind of had a positive outcome in the end. So
that's really good to hear. And I guess a lot of our listener will be on that social change journey of their own. And I guess through what you just talked about, what would you say was one of your biggest lessons learned that some of our listeners could actually apply potentially to their own cause through their journey?
Just to be fluid, I think, is really important. And also to take, like I said before, not to be disheartened by what might be perceived to be a failure, because actually any kind of failure is an opportunity to grow and learn and adapt.
It's not a mistake until you call it a mistake, is it?
About how you perceive that, yeah.
So one of my other questions for you, Jordyn, is what is the greatest idea? So we just talked about some of the lesson learned, but what is the greatest idea that you had to date? So again, take us through that story in terms of how did you take that aha moment, if you like, and turn it into something amazing that we see today?
I think probably the best idea we had was, the Boomerang Bags idea itself was pretty special, but the next best idea was to develop that toolkit and to put that into practice, because that really allowed the organisation to grow and the movement to grow. But it did take a number of years, and it's still evolving. So it started out as something quite basic, just us putting all of our content together into Word documents and that kind of thing, and sending that out to people, and just that evolving and getting feedback as those communities then started to implement that. We were seeing where all the gaps are and where we could improve that, and we're still doing that now that we've got 300 communities. We still get feedback all the time, and we can tell based on what questions people are asking us where the gaps of information are within those resources and how we can make that better. Yeah, so that was I think that was probably the best idea.
And that's probably another lesson learned right there, that you need to keep improving on a product. So even if the toolkit is working, you don't just stand still. You always keep improving, getting that feedback and feed that back into the toolkit. So I really like that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you mentioned you've got 300 communities, and we saw online that they're even in, America. Mel's home of Canada as well features there. So how do you actually go about communicating with your supporters and your volunteer communities to show what impact they're actually having?
Yeah, that's a good one. And particularly being very spread out far and wide, a lot of that is online. So love-hate relationship with technology. It's actually pretty amazing in that way. So a lot of our communication is with community coordinators, particularly email and Skype and phone calls. But with the wider audience, social media is an amazing platform. Social media, so your Facebook, Instagram, email, mail outs and that kind of thing, as well as media and blogs and stuff as well, and podcasts like this is a good way to get the story out there.
And so do you guys take monetary donations? We
do. It's not something that we push for. We do sell some products. So if people want to buy the bags, they can, which it's all non-profit. So everything just feeds back into supporting the organisation. Yeah, and grants and that kind of thing as well. We're often applying for grants to support everything that we do.
So it's really clear that what makes Boomerang Bags so unique is its actual really grassroots community focus. But I'm wondering, what's the next stage look like for the organisation? What's your vision?
I think that we really just want to continue to see it continue to grow. I mean, it was funny because we started out, like I said, with just one small community project, and within maybe a year or so after that, we had 10 in Australia, and that was such an exciting moment for us. So now to be sitting back and going, wow, we have 300 communities, and every week I'm adding, 5 or 10 new communities to that list. So I think it's just going to continue to scale up, and that's really exciting because then we have this kind of global network of Boomerang Bag communities all over the world, which means there's about so among those 300 communities, they've collectively made about 85,000 reusable bags out of recycled materials. So those are in circulation around the world. I guess essentially we saturate the world with those bags so that people don't need plastic anymore. They're not. It just creates a really nice way for people to be able to say no because they have an alternative there. We'd also really love to be able to. I love the idea of maybe being able to travel around to all of these communities. Like I said, the communication is often online, but if we were able to actually go and document the stories of all of these communities, because there's all these beautiful stories that we get to hear every day from people about what impact Boomerang Bags is having on them personally, but I'd love to be able to go and actually document that and put that together in some sort of film or something to share it with the world as well.
Boomerang Bag road trip.
Can I come?
We saw the video online of one of your volunteers, Doris, and we just think she's the coolest lady on earth.
She is the best. I think she's probably our biggest ambassador. She's 84 and she came to our first ever community meeting where we introduced the idea to implement it in Burleigh. She's come to every sewing bee and every event since.
Is that what a typical Boomerang Bag sewer is like, or what type of people do you attract?
Well, that's the best thing. It's so varied, from like Doris, who's 84, to, we've got stay-at-home mums that bring their children, and then we've got like men as well. We've got another volunteer, Tom, who also came to that first meetup, and all he wants to do is iron. So, because he can't sew, but he put his hand up in that meeting and said, I can't sew, but I can iron. So he comes in and he picks up piles of the little pockets and he hems all the edges and drops them back. And, it's a really cool way to meet a really diverse range of people. And what's really cool about that too is, I guess, unlike other environmental groups, because I've been involved in lots of environmental campaigns and that kind of thing, and sometimes it feels like you're preaching to the converted because obviously you attract like-minded people. But with Boomerang Bags, because there's a community and a sewing and a craft element, you can also reach a different demographic that otherwise probably wouldn't be reached. And then you've got education about the sustainability aspect of things being spread to that group of people as well.
So do you think that, I was going to ask you, what's your secret, Jordyn, in terms of keeping people like Tom or Doris involved, for such a long period? So is that because of that education component?
I think it's probably more to do with the social component and the fact that it's really positive. Like, I think being able to see firsthand, like, the impact that's having, it's something really tangible and hands-on that people are doing. That's a solution. It's I think that's probably what keeps people going, and it allows them to connect with, like I said, a really wide demographic of people as well, and share stories and learn and that kind of thing.
Mel, as we were watching the video, Mel said, Erin, I can see you becoming this grandmother. So for our final last questions, we like to do keep it short and sharp. So we like to ask them pretty quick and just tell us the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't try and think of it as any particular lens, but just first thing that comes to mind, probably like a lightning round sort of situation. So the first question is, what are you most excited about today?
Today, I'm excited because I just made banana ice cream and I'm about to eat it after this podcast.
Oh, yum.
Now we want banana ice cream.
This is just before dinner. Okay, and also, what was the one thing holding you back from starting Boomerang Bags?
Nothing really held me back from starting, but I guess getting to a point of investing all of my energy into it, the biggest thing that held me back was having to leave my job at the time. So, it's always a bit of a leap of faith into the unknown when you do that. Yeah, but I'm glad that I did.
What is the best advice that you ever received?
Be present.
Good one.
We approve. And so if you could leave our listeners with a few words that they'd really take to heart today, what would they be?
Just to know that anything is possible, that anyone has the power to create change if you are passionate about something, and to give it a go.
And to stop using plastic bags, right? I guess I just want to do a bit of a shout out, Jordyn, I guess. So tell us the best way to reach out to you and get involved with Boomerang Bags.
Just to head to the website, so www.boomerangbags.org. If you want to get involved with a community near you, there's a cool little map there where you can see where everything is and search for whichever one is closest to you. And so you can either get in touch with the community coordinators for that group, or you can get in touch with us directly for anything else.
And if someone is living somewhere there isn't a Boomerang Bags community, what do they do?
They can register through that website, and they'll be sent that toolkit and our contact details, and we can work with them to move forward to get it happening.
Do they need, what do they need?
Nothing really. They just need to be, they just need the capacity really to be able to gather their community together. We provide most of the resources, to get them started. So just lots of enthusiasm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jordyn. I'm very inspired, and I'm going to go and check out where I can find Boomerang Bags.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
The goodie bag.
Goody gumdrops. What are you putting in the goodie bag this episode, Mel?
I'm going to put it in a city. So I'm going to put in Copenhagen because I'm so impressed on the fact that they have more bikes on the road than cars.
That's crazy when you think about like a country like China where they have set days where you can't bring your car because there's so many cars.
It's crazy. And half of the commute are actually made by bikes and not by cars. I love that. But I want to say something about this. I was just doing the math before because I'm such a nerd. And Copenhagen is spending 4 times more per resident than Brisbane City is on their infrastructure network, like for bikes. So I think that has a lot to do with the fact that people don't have to cut through traffic. They have their own little bridge where they can cycle. I think it makes a big difference if you're feeling safe when you're cycling. I mean, do you cycle, Erin?
I do not, but it is also not only because I don't feel safe. Australians are really mean to bicycle riders, but also Brisbane's very hilly.
Yes.
Like you wouldn't want to be humping it up a Brisbane hill on a bike.
But it's not that hilly though.
It's pretty hilly.
I mean, you're talking to a Canadian. So what are you putting in the goodie bag, Erin?
I am putting in a company called Celotan. And they make something that is very dear to me, and that is brooches.
No, I didn't notice.
So I have over 200 brooches in my collection, and one of them is a little sloth brooch, and it's made by this company Celotan. And the reason why they're special and why they get singled out versus my other 200 brooches is that Celotan is actually a social enterprise that have donated almost $8,000 to date to the wild tiger conservation. And so all the profits from the sales of their animal brooches go towards helping save tigers, which are really endangered species. And the name actually came about from a tiger that the creator was looking after while she was a zookeeper. So all of the brooches are animals, and they're so cute and amazing. And when you buy one, you know that you're supporting wild tiger conservation.
So perhaps I should get myself an elephant brooch.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please head to iTunes, subscribe, and then leave us a rating and a review. Did you know that you can actually rate and review each episode? So even if you did it for last ones, please head over and do it for this one. Then you can head to our Facebook page, The Human Factor, and hit like and join in the conversation. Tell us what you thought about our episode, and if you have thoughts or insights to add to anything Jordyn said today, leave us a comment. Have you been inspired to make a change in your own community? Well, join in the conversation and just say hello.
Or tweet us at _Human Factor, or visit the website at humanfactor.com.au and leave us a voicemail or a message. This show is just one part of a community that really wants to affect and grow social change. So if you have a topic or a person that you'd like us to talk to, please let us know.
You're all awesome, and we'll see you next time.